Welcome to our deep dive into Neil Gaiman's The Sandman, and specifically this academic analysis we're looking at today.
Oh, yeah.
That really digs into the themes of identity and transformation.
Okay.
I've been so curious to unpack how these ideas play out in this amazing, sprawling world.
Well, The Sandman doesn't just touch upon those themes.
Right.
It throws you right into the deep end.
Yeah.
It uses these incredible characters to explore the very essence of who we are and how those identities shift and evolve, often in unexpected ways.
Let's start with Dream,
Okay.
also known as Morpheus, the king of dreams.
Right.
He initially comes across as incredibly rigid and duty-bound, almost trapped by his own power, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
In the beginning, Dream is almost a prisoner of his own role.
Yeah.
He's this powerful, almost godlike figure, but he's also emotionally stunted, unable to really connect with others. The academic analysis actually makes a fascinating point about this. It argues that Dream's early rigidity is a direct result of his immense power. It's as if the responsibility of ruling the dreaming has isolated him, making him afraid of vulnerability.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Then comes that pivotal moment when he's imprisoned by a human occultist.
Right.
It's like his whole world is turned upside down.
What's so interesting about this imprisonment is that it strips Dream of his power, forcing him to confront his own vulnerability in a way he never has before.
Wow.
He's literally caged, isolated from the dreaming, and this isolation forces him to confront who he is beyond the mask of the Dream King.
Interesting.
The analysis draws a parallel here to real-world power structures, suggesting that those in positions of authority often struggle to embrace vulnerability, seeing it as a weakness.
So his imprisonment becomes a catalyst for change. But how exactly does this change manifest?
Right.
It's not like he instantly becomes a warm and fuzzy Dream King.
Right. The transformation is a process.
Okay.
And it's driven by his interactions with other characters.
So who are we talking about here?
Take Death, for example.
Okay.
Her warmth and compassion directly challenge Dream's initial coldness.
Oh, interesting.
It's like she's showing him a different way of wielding power, one that embraces empathy and connection.
I like that.
The analysis argues that Death acts as a mirror for Dream, reflecting back to him the possibility of change.
What stands out to you about those interactions? What are some specific moments that highlight this shift in Dream's character?
There's a scene where Dream and Death are walking together, collecting souls, and Death stops to comfort a grieving musician.
Oh, wow.
Dream, initially impatient, observes this exchange, and you can see a flicker of something new in his eyes.
Really?
It's a subtle moment, but it marks a turning point in his understanding of mortality and the importance of compassion.
That's beautiful.
The analysis points to this scene as a key example of how Dream begins to shed his rigid persona and embrace a more empathetic approach.
It's almost like he's starting to see the world through new eyes, realizing that power doesn't have to equal isolation.
Yeah.
His journey really speaks to a universal human struggle, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
The need to let go of fixed ideas of ourselves and embrace change, even when it's uncomfortable.
We all have these preconceived notions about who we are, but life has a way of challenging those notions, forcing us to adapt and evolve.
Right.
Dream's journey is a reminder that transformation is often born out of adversity.
That's powerful.
And that embracing vulnerability can lead to unexpected growth.
While Morpheus represents a journey from rigidity to change other characters in the town, the Sandman embodied the concept of fluid identity from the very beginning.
Rosewalker is a perfect example. You have this seemingly ordinary young woman who suddenly discovers she's the vortex.
Oh, wow.
This powerful being with a destiny that's intertwined with the dreaming.
Wow.
The academic analysis delves into the psychological implications of Rose's situation, highlighting the immense pressure and confusion that comes with having one's identity so dramatically redefined.
It makes you wonder how much control any of us have over who we become when forces beyond our understanding come into play.
And then there's Lucifer. Talk about throwing expectations out the window. Here's this iconic figure, the embodiment of evil in so many stories, choosing to abandon hell and redefine their own existence.
It's such a bold statement.
Absolutely.
What do you think Gaiman is trying to say about identity with this particular choice?
I think it speaks to the idea that we are not bound by predefined roles or destinies.
Interesting.
The analysis argues that Lucifer's abdication is an act of self-determination, a rejection of the traditional power structure of heaven and hell. It's like Lucifer is saying, my identity is not defined by what others expect of me.
Wow.
I have the power to choose my own path.
That choice really challenges our assumptions, doesn't it?
Definitely.
It makes you question the whole concept of good and evil.
Yeah.
And whether those labels are even relevant when it comes to something as complex as identity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The Sandman encourages us to look beyond simplistic labels and acknowledge the fluidity, the contradictions that make up who we are.
And speaking of challenging traditional notions, we can't forget desire, whose very existence plays with gender norms and expectations.
Desire's fluidity, embodying both masculine and feminine qualities, is so interesting because it forces us to confront our own preconceived notions about gender and identity. The analysis even suggests that desire represents the inherent ambiguity of desire itself, constantly shifting and evolving.
It's interesting.
What's fascinating is that the Sandman doesn't shy away from these complex ideas. It embraces them, urging us to question those rigid boxes we often try to fit ourselves and others into.
So what does this exploration of fluid identity in the Sandman make you think about your own assumptions?
Well, it absolutely does.
Yeah.
The Sandman compels us to look beyond surface appearances and recognize the complexity and beauty of individual identity.
I agree.
It suggests that true understanding comes from embracing those nuances and contradictions rather than trying to force people into neat, easily defined categories.
And, you know, as much as the Sandman explores the fantastical aspects of identity, it also doesn't shy away from the difficult realities of human experience. One of those realities is the role of suffering in shaping who we are.
The series delves into the darker aspects of existence, acknowledging that pain, loss, and hardship are often catalysts for profound transformation.
Take the character of Nada, for example.
Yes, sure.
Her story is steeped in tragedy, betrayal, loss, and centuries of torment.
Absolutely.
But there's this incredible thread of resilience running through her narrative, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What's compelling about Nada's story is that it highlights the transformative power of forgiveness.
Really?
The academic analysis argues that Nada's journey isn't just about enduring suffering. It's about finding the strength to forgive both herself and those who have wronged her.
Wow.
This forgiveness is what ultimately allows her to break free from the cycle of pain and find a measure of peace.
Her story really resonates with me.
Yeah.
Because it suggests that even in the face of unimaginable suffering, there's the potential for healing and growth. It's a reminder that we all have the capacity to overcome adversity.
Absolutely.
And emerge from those experiences stronger and more compassionate.
And it's important to remember that Nada's suffering is directly tied to her relationship with Dream. Oh, right.
Which brings us back to his own transformation.
Okay.
His imprisonment, though, brutal,
yeah,
ultimately allows him to understand the depth of Nada's pain.
Right.
And the consequences of his own actions.
It's like the series is saying that sometimes we need to experience hardship ourselves.
Yeah.
To truly empathize with the suffering of others.
That's a powerful insight. The analysis even goes so far as to suggest that Dream's initial inability to understand Nada's pain stems from his own fear of vulnerability.
Wow.
It's only through his own experience of suffering that he's able to develop the empathy and compassion needed to truly connect with her.
Makes you think about your own experiences, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
How have the challenges you've faced shaped your understanding of yourself and the world around you?
The question worth pondering.
Yeah.
The Sandman suggests that those difficult experiences, while we may wish to avoid them, can be the very things that forge our strength.
Yeah, our compassion and our capacity for growth.
All right, let's shift gears a bit and talk about another facet of identity explored in The Sandman.
Okay.
The tension between assigned roles and chosen identities.
This theme is so beautifully illustrated through the character of Hob Gadling. The man who chooses to live forever and experience life in all its messy glory.
He seems like a fun guy.
The analysis contrasts Hob with Dream, pointing out that while Dream is bound by duty and a preordained role, Hob has the freedom to explore different facets of identity over time.
So he's constantly reinventing himself.
Exactly. Yeah. Trying on different roles, different personas as he journeys through the centuries.
That's amazing.
He embraces change and adaptation, becoming a living testament to the fluidity of self.
That's so cool. Man.
The analysis argues that Hob represents the human desire to explore different possibilities, to constantly evolve and redefine who we are.
But his immortality also comes with a price, doesn't it? It's not all sunshine and roses.
Right.
He experiences loss, heartbreak, and the ever-present awareness of his own mortality, even as he continues to live.
That's where the analysis gets really interesting. It suggests that Hob's immortality isn't a blessing, but a curse, forcing him to confront the cyclical nature of existence and the inevitability of loss.
Wow.
Despite his eternal life, he's constantly reminded of the ephemeral nature of everything around him.
It makes you wonder if true immortality is even desirable.
Right.
Or if it ultimately robs us of the preciousness of life's fleeting moments.
It's a question the Sandman leaves us to ponder.
And speaking of pondering, let's contrast Hob's experience with that of Orpheus. Dream's son, whose tragic immortality highlights the dangers of clinging too tightly to the past.
Orpheus's story is heartbreaking. This immortal being trapped in a perpetual state of mourning, unable to move on from the loss of his beloved Eurydice.
The analysis points out that Orpheus's tragedy lies in his inability to adapt, to embrace the possibility of change, even in the face of immense loss.
Exactly.
He becomes a prisoner of his own grief.
Right.
A cautionary tale about the dangers of clinging to a fixed identity.
His experience is a stark contrast to Hob's, isn't it?
Definitely.
While Hob embraces the ever-changing nature of existence, Orpheus becomes stagnant, frozen in time by his own grief.
It's a powerful juxtaposition.
Yes.
And it raises the question, how do we navigate the tension between continuity and change in our own lives?
That's a good question.
How do we hold on to those aspects of our identity that are core to who we are, while also allowing ourselves to grow and evolve as we experience the world?
It's a delicate balance, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the Sandman doesn't offer easy answers.
I agree.
Instead, it invites us to explore these complexities, to grapple with the messy realities of identity and transformation.
And that's what makes this series so compelling.
Absolutely.
It doesn't shy away from the big questions, the challenging truths about human existence. Instead, it embraces them, urging us to do the same. Now, before we wrap up, I have to bring up another theme that's woven throughout The Sandman. And it's one that's particularly relevant to our discussion of identity. The power of stories themselves.
That's such an important point.
Right.
After all, dream is the embodiment of stories.
Yeah.
The ruler of the dreaming, where imagination and narrative reign supreme.
The analysis emphasizes that the Sandman constantly blurs the lines between reality and fiction.
Right.
Reminding us that stories have the power to shape our perceptions, our beliefs, even our very identities.
Think about it. We're all made up of stories.
That's true.
The narratives we tell ourselves about our past.
Right.
The myths and legends that shape our cultures. The books and movies that capture our imaginations. They all contribute to who we are and how we see the world.
And the Sandman plays with this idea constantly.
Oh, yeah.
The characters themselves are often aware of their own narrative roles.
Right.
Breaking the fourth wall and commenting on the stories they're caught up in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like Gaiman is reminding us that we're all both participants in and creators of our own narratives. The analysis suggests that by becoming aware of the stories we tell ourselves and the stories we consume, we can start to exercise more agency over how those narratives shape our identities.
It's like we have the power to become conscious storytellers.
Yes.
Choosing the narratives that empower us and rejecting those that hold us back.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And the Sandman encourages us to be active participants in the stories of our lives, to challenge those narratives that no longer serve us, and to write new ones that reflect our evolving identities.
So as we conclude this deep dive, I think it's important to reflect on how the various themes we've discussed, change, fluidity, suffering, and the power of stories, all converge to create this rich tapestry of identity and transformation.
The Sandman doesn't offer easy answers.
I agree.
But it provides a framework for understanding the complexities of who we are and how we evolve over time.
It encourages us to embrace the messy realities of human existence, to question our assumptions,
Absolutely,
and to recognize the transformative power of experienced relationships and even death.
And ultimately, it reminds us that our identities are not fixed.
Right.
But rather a constantly evolving narrative
Yeah.
that we have the power to shape.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the fascinating world of the Sandman.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope it sparked some new insights and inspired you to explore the transformative power of stories in your own life.